au député de Memramcook-Tantramar.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to start by respectfully recognizing and acknowledging that we are gathered here today on the unsurrendered and unceded traditional lands of the Wolastoqiyik. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which the Wolastoqiyik, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1725. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Wolastoq, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. I am honored to speak in the legislature today representing the people of Memramcook-Tantramar. A budget document really lays out a government's priorities based on how they tax and spend money. I have heard this language being used in an accusatory fashion, tax and spend, as if it is a negative thing. But it is literally government's job to tax and to spend. The real questions we need to ask are: who is being taxed? How much? How is the money being spent? Is it helping our society? Are we getting the best value? I am not convinced, Mr. Speaker, that we are getting the best value out of this budget. There are so many missed opportunities. Why does it talk about building a sustainable health care system but not make strong provisions for preventative health care? Why does it prioritize education but not talk about additional supports in classrooms? Why does it underscore the importance of social services but not deal with the underlying causes of poverty? And there is little to no mention of action on climate adaptation, renewable energy, public transit, tourism, agriculture, energy efficiency, and the list goes on. A budget is about making priorities, and making priorities involves making choices. It means dealing with some things and not others. But it also implies you are choosing those things which are most important, those things that are critical to the well-being of your province and the people who live there. I'm not convinced, Mr. Speaker, that this budget addresses the most critical challenges we are facing as a province. Challenges like poverty, which continues to deeply impact every aspect of our society. The fact is, the system is only working for some New Brunswickers, not for all New Brunswickers. But the costs of poverty affect all New Brunswickers, not only those living in poverty. Poverty and inequality contribute to mental health challenges in the population. They impact the economy, healthcare, education, the justice system. When we make sure that people have their basic needs met and enough money to live with dignity, we have stronger communities, happier people, and lower costs all around. If poverty is so costly for the government, for the economy, and for the general well-being of the province, then why are we spending our money on treating the symptoms rather than the root causes? Why are we offering palliative care instead of a cure? There are policies that could be implemented that wouldn't cost the government a cent, but that would improve people's lives immensely, such as increasing the amount that someone can earn before their social assistance gets clawed back by government. According to the Common Front for Social Justice's report, Poverty 2.0, social assistance recipients who are working are currently allowed to earn $150 per month, while households of 2 or more are allowed to earn up to $200 per month. Those in the extended benefit category can earn up to $500 per month, but any earnings over and above that are clawed back from their monthly benefits. How are people supposed to save any money, let alone earn enough to pay for their basic needs? For those who are able to work, it offers the opportunity to participate more fully in our communities. But this model provides a disincentive to work, makes it impossible for many people to meet even their most essential needs, and ensures that individuals must continue to rely on generous community support from organizations, or in some cases, face homelessness and go without their basic needs being met. In addition to the price of dignity and the heartbreaking challenges community organizations face in being unable to keep up with demand, we face additional expenses elsewhere in our system, for example, in increased healthcare costs. I was pleased to hear the government announce it would be linking increases to minimum wage to the Consumer Price Index, though I would have liked to see a more substantial increase to the minimum wage. I also have many questions about funding for housing. Housing is a human right. Housing people in shelters and other short-term lodgings is expensive and is not a suitable solution. And yet the government appears to be cutting funding to housing programs. We already have a long wait list for housing support. Housing First is a proven strategy. This winter, we have had a homelessness crisis in our province, made visible by the early arrival of winter weather and frigid temperatures. Given all this, it is surprising and disappointing to see cuts to housing spending. I will withhold judgment until I see the details of the housing plans with funding from the federal government, but this is certainly not a promising start. The budget also fails to adequately address the manifold challenges in our healthcare system. Much like the approach to poverty, the government plan appears to be to continue to pour money into treating the end result instead of the cause. Cuts to spending on wellness are absolutely inexplicable. We need more investment in wellness, not less. We need to find ways to improve overall health, to prevent disease, and keep people healthier longer, which will improve quality of life and ultimately lower healthcare costs. But there are, of course, also issues that must be dealt with in the short term. The nursing shortage, for example, is hitting a critical point. I am pleased to see plans in the budget to begin to address this shortage. I was also happy to see an increased amount of funding for addiction services and for home care workers, though I'm waiting to see further details before I could begin celebrating. I'm also thrilled to hear the government say it plans to hire more nurse practitioners. However, I do question the decision to put a pilot project in Moncton. Nurse practitioners are already a proven concept and have already successfully worked with patients in New Brunswick. A pilot project in one location in Moncton does nothing to solve the problems around lack of rural access to primary health care. According to the New Brunswick Health Council, there are areas in my region that are underserved compared to Moncton, such as Sackville, Dorchester, Port Elgin. I know the same is true of other rural areas in our province. I've met many people who have been without a family physician for years, and they are desperate. Perhaps we need not only a nurse practitioner clinic in Moncton, but nurse practitioners practicing all around the province. Ultimately, it costs more for the system when people wait longer to receive care or end up in ERs. And the costs are not just monetary. It can cost lives. These are significant issues and ones I hope are addressed sooner rather than later. It is commendable, Mr. Speaker, that our government is taking our financial situation seriously. Indeed, it was heartening to hear the Minister of Finance speak so spiritedly about the need for action and about the long-term consequences of ignoring this obvious and potentially devastating problem. I wish, Mr. Speaker, the government would speak this passionately about addressing climate change. In fact, I can use the Minister of Finance's own words, ever so slightly modified. Imagine if, instead of finances, the Minister had used the following to speak about climate change. Clearly, our province is at a crossroads. We cannot continue to push decisions down the road. It is not responsible, and those actions are endangering the future of our province. We hope that all members of this House will agree that we cannot continue this course. It would simply be irresponsible not to change direction. Your government is putting forward a plan to ensure you, your children, and your grandchildren have a secure future. We chose to address climate change because we need to act with urgency. By changing course together, we can turn our province around. Mr. Speaker, I would like to note I only changed 3 words in that whole section of speech, from balance the budget to address climate change. But what a difference 3 words makes. Imagine if our government spoke with urgency, such urgency, on climate change. Ce budget démontre plutôt un grave manque de compréhension de la crise du climat actuelle ou de la direction à prendre pour l'avenir, dès maintenant. Il faut se préparer à l'énergie renouvelable, rendre nos bâtiments éco-énergétiques, réévaluer la consommation et repenser à la forme que devrait prendre le succès économique. Pourquoi se fier autant aux exportations et aux combustibles fossiles pour stimuler l'économie à l'heure où les marchés changent et deviennent de plus en plus risqués? Tout ça, c'est le passé et non l'avenir. Notre économie est déjà chambranlante. Pourquoi continuer à s'accrocher à des industries qui vont dépérir de notre vivant? On le sait, mais on persiste au lieu de faire confiance à de nouveaux moteurs économiques qu'on pourrait léguer à nos enfants et à leurs enfants. This isn't the first time I will grope Greta Thunberg in the legislature. She is a wise 16-year-old from Sweden who is calling on governments to be bold and act as if her life depends upon it, because it does. In January, Greta stood before global leaders at the World Economic Forum and noted, "Adults keep saying, we owe it to the young people to give them hope, but I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if our house is on fire, because it is." Greta is right. We are in crisis. Our house is on fire. Just look at Cyclone Idai, which might just be the biggest storm to ever hit the southern hemisphere. At least 1,000 people are thought to have died and at least 1 million have been displaced. Closer to home, there are severe floods happening right now in the Midwest of the USA. Parts of California burned to the ground last year. People's tires and sneakers melted on the pavement as they fled. Some didn't escape. This is horrifying, but it could be in our future. We are already experiencing the effects of climate change in our province. Severe weather events have been increasing, becoming more frequent and more costly. From 1990 to 1999, there were 6 natural disasters that cost $27.3 million in disaster recovery. From 2000 to 2009, there were 10 disasters, which cost $50 million. From 2010 to 2018, there were 11 events that cost $196 million. Most of my riding is behind dikes or on the coast, from Memramcook to Sackville to Cape Tormentine. We are vulnerable. There are many farmers in our province. They are vulnerable. There are many people who rely on fishing for their livelihood. They are vulnerable. We must prepare for the difficult challenges on the horizon and the challenges we already face. The Minister of Finance said it in his budget, long-term stability does matter, but it cannot apply only to balancing the budget. Where's the long-term thinking on climate change? On other challenges facing the province? Looking at the vastly complex challenges we are facing only from the very narrow window of whether or not our budget is balanced is misguided and short-sighted. C'est le temps de concevoir des plans de résilience et de s'adapter à ce qui s'en vient et à ce qui est déjà arrivé. Les inondations, les sécheresses, les vagues de chaleur, les tempêtes, la glace, autant de phénomènes dérangeants et dangereux qui ont des conséquences économiques graves, qui font grimper les coûts. Pensez-y un instant. Qu'est-ce que le ministère des Transports et de l'Infrastructure va faire sans les fonds nécessaires à l'entretien? C'est pourtant clair comme l'eau de roche. Les bouleversements climatiques et leurs impacts sur la météo augmentent l'entretien. Peut-être que certains d'entre vous pensent qu'on n'a pas à se préoccuper de ces faits pendant un débat sur le budget de la province. Mais une de mes inquiétudes est que tout le monde ne résistera pas aux tempêtes sur un pied égal. Cette inégalité de notre société devient évidente quand il s'agit de faire face aux contraintes climatiques, telles que des hivers précoces, un froid intense, des inondations, surtout que tout ça fait augmenter le prix des aliments. Le changement climatique n'a pas le même effet sur tout le monde. Voilà pourquoi il faut y avoir une question de justice sociale. And for a government claiming to care about evidence, I am deeply concerned that this budget completely failed to address the climate emergency. That it, in fact, completely ignored that there is a climate emergency. Inaction is a death sentence for some New Brunswickers. I am not a radical leftist hippie, not that there's anything wrong with that. I am just looking at the facts. And the facts are clearly telling us that the status quo will kill us. Left unchecked, business as usual will make our planet uninhabitable. Globally, the status quo is already killing people. More will die. Yes, this sounds dramatic, but it is not hyperbolic. I am not exaggerating. We need to have a clear understanding of what we face in order to properly address it. And what we face is human extinction. How can there be nothing new in the budget to address this threat? How Can there be more money in this budget for what appears to be a slush fund for MLAs to spend a bit of money in their ridings that no one asked for than there is money to help our children to literally have a future? Only $1.6 million is spent on the Climate Change Secretariat, whereas it looks like $2.4 million is set aside for MLAs to spend however they'd like in their ridings. I call on MLAs to think about this carefully and perhaps spend this money on climate adaptation projects in the province. This money came from elsewhere in the budget, and I'm concerned that it reinforces patronage in our democracy when it could have been spent more effectively elsewhere. It is irresponsible to pretend this isn't a crisis. We don't have time for climate deniers, and we don't have time for climate delayers. A budget that, for all intents and purposes, ignores the climate emergency is unacceptable. What is more baffling still is that the Minister of Finance mentioned sustainability at least a dozen times in his budget speech last week. How can you talk about sustainability without mentioning the environment? The budget speech literally did not mention the environment or the climate. It did mention the economy nearly as many times as sustainability, however. Perhaps someone could explain to the Minister that sustainability includes three principles: economic viability, yes, but also social equity and environmental protection. Sustainability is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. But while the budget speech did at least acknowledge we have an economy and that it is facing challenges, it did not appear to have a much greater grasp on how to deal with those challenges than it did on how to deal with climate change. Sure, we should be open for business, but not just any business and not at any cost. To point to fracking in the economic outlook as a medium-term boost flies in the face of what science is telling us that we need to do. We cannot invest in or develop any new fossil fuel infrastructure. The Department of Energy and Resource Development should not have a mandate to support new developments of this sort. Instead, we should be looking at ways to decarbonize the economy and train or retrain workers in new fields. We are also completely missing the boat on the economic opportunities presented by renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. My Green colleagues and I have expertise in these fields and welcome the opportunity to contribute to development that is actually sustainable in our province. We could, as a province, be leaders in these fields, but we are looking backward, not forward. We can't be afraid of change. I heard yesterday the Minister of Energy and Resource Development saying he would like to collaborate. I would like that too. We need to plan for the province we want to be, and that we will have to be 10, 20, 50 years from now, not the province we were 25 years ago. We are not getting ahead because we persist in trying the same solutions over and over again while expecting a different result. I believe we all know what that defines. Une question s'impose au sujet de nos ressources. En tirons-nous la meilleure valeur possible? Prenons les terres de la couronne comme exemple. Est-ce qu'on obtient la pleine valeur de leur bonne gestion, de leur capacité à créer des emplois et à contribuer à l'économie de nos communautés? Qu'en est-il des services d'écosystème que nos forêts peuvent fournir pour prévenir des inondations? Pensons-y un instant. Les forêts captent le carbone, purifient l'air qu'on respire, conservent la diversité des espèces, plantes et animaux. La liste des bienfaits est très longue. We need to consider how to support and promote tourism, which is so important to our economy. I'm deeply concerned that major cuts to tourism will harm the industry that so many New Brunswickers depend upon. I'm concerned we are going to miss the opportunity for us to avoid being the drive-through province. Tax evasion and tax havens are a significant problem. Tax breaks for some companies in our province are an obstacle to us having fair taxation in New Brunswick. By addressing these issues, we would have more money to pay for the essential services New Brunswickers need and deserve. But currently, money is moving out of the province and out of the country into certain pockets and instead of into our coffers. Obviously, we don't want to tax anyone to death, but because we don't get the tax revenues that we should, tax revenues that would otherwise be invested in our public sector, there are literally people who are dying. This idea that we don't have any money, it's not true. The ideas of trickle-down economics, also not true. The money is flowing up to the rich and out of the province and country. The rich are hoarding the wealth at the expense of most New Brunswickers. New Brunswickers keep being told to tighten their belts, to go without, to accept cuts, to accept poverty, to accept the status quo in the name of the economy and a balanced budget, while wealth continues to be concentrated among a few. This is not sustainable, it is not fair, and it is not acceptable as a 21st century economic strategy. As elected officials, I think we are called upon to continually strive to do things a better way. I think implementing gender-based analysis plus to everything the government does could improve our policies and help make our communities and infrastructure and institutions more inclusive. Gender-based analysis plus is a process by which a policy, program, initiative, or service can be examined for its impacts on various groups of women and men, looking at gender and sex, but also going beyond this to include other realities of people's lives. This means that analysts, researchers, evaluators, and decision makers are able to continually improve their work and attain better results for everyone by being more responsive to their specific needs and circumstances. I think that the budget, and by extension, the women of New Brunswick would have benefited immensely from the use of a gender-based analysis. Some of the key things that women's groups have stated that are needed are safe and affordable housing. That's important for women. The cuts to social assistance have also had an impact on different people in New Brunswick. Selon le regroupement féministe du Nouveau-Brunswick, 23% des femmes occupant un emploi travaillent à temps partiel comparativement à 10% des hommes. 23% des femmes de la province ont un faible revenu, comparativement à 17% des hommes. Nous pouvons conclure que ce sont les femmes qui sont disproportionnellement affectées par cette coupure budgétaire. Social assistance cuts disproportionately impact women in New Brunswick. Gender-based analysis would have taken these things into account, and I think we would have seen a more balanced budget in terms of gender. Cutting the funding to the New Brunswick Women's Council was incomprehensible to me. If this were truly a government that prioritized women, then this government would not have cut the budgeted funding for this independent body that does research and offers advice for better policies, and does so while prioritizing diverse voices in an intentionally intersectional way. It was a drop in the bucket for the provincial budget, but a significant loss for an organization that serves an important role as an independent advisory arm of the government in New Brunswick to represent New Brunswick's women and people with diverse gender identities. Monsieur le Président, il est primordial de protéger les droits des personnes, y compris les droits des minorités de notre province. Il faut aussi se battre pour les droits qui ne sont pas encore garantis, comme le droit au logement, par exemple. Il faut aussi lutter pour de nouveaux droits, comme l'équité salariale dans le secteur privé. Et qu'en est-il de protéger et d'honorer des droits acquis? Profitant du 50e anniversaire de la loi sur les langues officielles pour reconnaître la valeur, la richesse que le bilinguisme apporte au Nouveau-Brunswick. We are incredibly fortunate to be able to live in 2 languages in our province. This provides tangible benefits like a workforce that is sought out by companies who require employees who can work in both languages, and the ability to more easily forge connections with many countries around the world, but also intangible benefits, like creating a more accepting, open-minded population. Being able to see and describe the world around you with more than one language gives you a broader perspective. It brings us closer together and helps us better understand one another. I was pleased to see the budget for the Official Languages Commissioner increase, along with other legislative officers like the Auditor General. 50 years in, it grieves me that the Francophone New Brunswickers still have to explain why the Official Languages Act is important. As an Anglophone, I'm able to access healthcare and education and do pretty much anything in my first language. I don't even think about it. When I walk into a store or a hospital or a police station, I just assume I'll be able to speak to anyone I meet in English. And 99.9% of the time, that is the case. The same is not true for Francophone New Brunswickers. I think perhaps we do Francophones a disservice by constantly referring to them as the minority, as if they were somehow insignificant. Francophones make up about 1/3 of our population. That means that 1 in every 3 New Brunswickers cannot walk into a hospital or police station or grocery store and expect to be served in their language. It is something they must constantly think about and constantly defend. Let's turn the tables for a moment to help those of us who have never been in this situation try to understand what this might be like. Imagine for a moment if we as a province stated that we didn't think it was really worthwhile to bother ensuring Anglophones could access essential services in their language. Imagine the next time you called 911 or rushed your child to the emergency room, you had to wonder if you were going to be able to communicate with the person on the other end of the line or the doctor in the ER. And imagine if, when you expressed concerns about this situation, you were told it didn't really matter what language you were served in, as long as you were served. We are an officially bilingual province. We have been for 50 years. Perhaps we can safely stop arguing about if and why and start arguing about how we do it better, because we can do it better. I get that it is a greater challenge for some of those in New Brunswick that only speak one of our official languages to find work in our province, though there are a lot of myths about this flying around. Second language training for adults should be widely accessible. It is certainly not impossible to find second language training in New Brunswick, but it is often prohibitively expensive or not available at times that are convenient for people who are currently working. If we, as a province, support bilingualism, then we, as a province, need to do more to ensure that New Brunswickers have the opportunity to learn a second language. We also need to do a better job of teaching our children to speak a second language. It is baffling the trouble we seem to have in running immersion in language programs. Second and third and fourth languages are taught in schools all over the world. Are our students any less capable? No, certainly not. Then why do we seem to struggle with this? In particular, I hope that any moves toward changing the entry point for French immersion will be halted. Not only is this completely ridiculous to continue to change the system from one entry point to another every few years, but grade 1 and even kindergarten, which is when I started learning French, are widely accepted as the best entry points for children to learn a second language. The earlier, the better. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. Let's close the case on this one, and move on to other challenges. Mr. Speaker, this budget document lays out the government's priorities for the next year, the things it considers most important, most critical. And so, I go back to my original question. Are New Brunswickers getting the best value for their money in this budget? Respectfully, Mr. Speaker, I believe they are not. Frankly, this budget is not that different from the Liberal budget last year. It's basically business as usual, except less money for the poor. The Minister of Finance spoke of the need for change, but then did not deliver anything substantially different. We continue to hemorrhage money in certain areas. This cannot be fixed by spending more money in the same way. We need to get to the root causes of these challenges and start spending money to solve problems instead of simply managing them. And we need to acknowledge problems like climate change and take concrete steps to meet them. We can no longer pull the covers over our head and pretend that the monsters under the bed aren't real. We have to come to a turning point, and what we do now will impact generations upon generations. We need to be truly sustainable and realize that everything is interconnected. Our economy, the environment, equity, and fixing one part while ignoring the others isn't really fixing anything at all. Merci, thank you, Wallalin, Mr. Speaker.